In the interest of time, this will be our last question.
Okay, hi.
First and foremost, Vice President Pence, it's an honor to be with you here today.
Thank you.
If someone told me I'd be talking to a former vice president last month, I would have called him crazy, but here we are. Life's a beautiful thing, and you never know what's going to happen. So first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to visit our part of the country.
You bet.
I want to talk to you a little bit about political division. It's something that Governor Cox and his opponent, when they visited this last semester, talked about how the national division has been seeping into state and local level politics. I can tell you, as a former campaign door knocker, the first question I always get at a local level was whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. Mm-hmm. So the question I had for you is this: given everything that's going on with, as we were talking about with January 6th, all the events of the previous year, what can the people do to prevent and alleviate the division among politicians? And what can politicians do to alleviate the divisions among the people?
It's a wonderful question. What was your name?
Matthew Drachman.
Matthew, great question. Appreciate it. I was smiling when you said about what a great country this is. I mean, during the 2016 campaign, I'd have reporters say to me, "What's been the most surprising thing about running for vice president?" And I said, "Do you mean other than the fact that I'm running?" I mean, we got the phone call from Donald Trump, and my daughter said, "Dad, we all saw this coming." I said, "Well, I'm glad you did." An amazing thing. You think about the namesake and the grandson of an Irish immigrant. I had the privilege to stand up on that stage in January 2017, raise my right hand, take that oath of office. This is a great country. You're right. I have a very strong feeling about what you said, and I write about it a lot in my book, which was gratuitously plugged by Governor Gary Herbert earlier. My publisher thanks you. Look, when I started out in politics, I was 29 years old and got involved in a really rough and tumble campaign back in 1988, another one in 1990, gave as good as we got, tore into our opponent. But afterwards, I really, as a Christian, I began to reflect on the obligations of my faith in the public square. And I ended up writing an essay for the newspapers in Indiana entitled "Confessions of a Negative Campaigner." And I just came to the conclusion that as a Christian, I had an obligation to conduct myself in campaigns better than I had. And so from that point forward, I had a brief and unmemorable career in talk radio. I loved it. But in my time in the Congress, my time as governor, my time as vice president, I always tried to practice civility, serving an audience of one. And it isn't, people will tell you, I'm conservative, but I'm not in a bad mood about it. I mean, I love a debate. Let's go. Let's talk about the big issues of the day, and I'm happy to tell you how wrong you are. I really am. But there's a difference between telling somebody that their ideas are bad and telling them they're a bad person. And I've always tried to, out of living out my faith in the public square, I've always tried to live out that guardrail, if you will. I think democracy depends on heavy doses of civility. And America needs a return to civility in the public square. And I write about this in my book. I led the House Conservative Caucus when I was in the Congress, and but I will tell you that some of my most cherished relationships that I write about in the book were with Democrats that I agreed with on nothing. I mean, the late John Lewis, an icon of the civil rights movement. Yes, indeed. I don't mind telling you, John was wrong about everything, except that he was a great man. and his personal courage in his life had made America a more perfect union in his time serving alongside the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was also a man of profound Christian faith. And we would be in lock horns debate on the floor of the House of Representatives, but John sensed, and I sensed in him, that we shared something much deeper. And out of that came a certain respect for keeping the battle above the belt, if you will. And so in 2010, when he was leading his annual pilgrimage to Selma, Alabama, to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and mark the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, John stopped me on the House floor and he said, I'd like you to co-chair the pilgrimage with me. And I was humbled by that, and I told him, I'll do it, John, on one condition, and that is that Karen and our 3 children could go as well, because I wanted them to see that history, to hear that history, and to learn that history. John was one example, but there are many in my life that demonstrated that we never had to compromise our convictions. And you don't have to compromise your convictions to be kind. And I really do believe that everywhere I go across the country, that the American people are ready to get back to what worked, right? Get back to the principles of freedom that I just described here today. Strong military, strong border, free enterprise, conservatives on our courts, protecting our liberties. But I also think the American people are ready to get back to a United States of America, where we're united around the principle that all of us are entitled to our own deeply held beliefs and values and faith and convictions, and that we won't begrudge those of one another, but we'll respect one another. Then we'll count the votes and we'll figure out what the policy will be, but we'll do it all as Americans. And I believe in my heart of hearts that's exactly where we're going to go. So help us God. Thank you. Thank you all very much. It's a great, great honor to be here at Utah Valley. And thank you, Governor Herbert.